ahead and get started because I do know that we are on a tight schedule, and I'm very, very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having us out to Lacey, I should say, to introduce the Elder Economic Security Initiative. We head over to Olympia later today to present this same information at the state capitol. So can I go ahead and get the next slide? Okay, so our goals for today. First, I want to introduce you to the Washington Elder Economic Security Initiative. My colleague Allison is going to walk you through the Elder Economic Security Standard Index for Washington, known as the Elder Index for short. And then finally, we're going to discuss some solutions for allowing Washington elders to age in place. What I have to do today is emphasize for you that this is research put into action. So what I'm going to do is talk to you about how a number of state and community-based organizations from around the country are using this Elder Index data to advance a policy and program agenda that will allow seniors to age in place in their communities with the income that they need to meet their basic needs. To start, I'll tell you a little bit about where I'm from. Wider Opportunities for Women is a national advocacy organization with over 40 years of experience helping women and their families achieve economic independence and equality of opportunity. And we reach this mission through our national and local programs in Washington, D.C. The first of our programs, the Family Economic Security Program, started about 10 years ago, and at the cornerstone of that program was a tool called the Family Economic Self-Sufficiency Standard. And they do have that tool here in Washington. And that tool looked at what it costs for families to meet their basic needs without any form of public or private assistance. Building on our intergenerational mission of promoting economic security, about 5 years ago, WOW launched the Elder Economic Security Initiative. The cornerstone, again, of that tool is the Elder Index, which we are presenting today. Just recently, WOW launched its Building Bridges to Economic Security campaign, and about a year ago, we completed national public opinion research that looked at what is it that Americans are thinking when it comes to economic security? What are messages that really resonate across the generations? And through that campaign, we're really very clearly trying to build a bridge between our work to promote family economic security and elder economic security, using messaging and advocacy that really spans the generations. So today we're focusing on the Elder Initiative, which is a multi-year project that offers a conceptual framework and concrete tools to really shift the public dialogue from one of eradicating elder poverty to one of promoting economic security. We're working to bridge the generations to look at what does it cost to retire and what are the things that someone needs in their working life in order to have that income in retirement. And finally, we're really looking to push policy and program change. We want to see the concept of economic security institutionalized in policies and programs so that as we're looking to help our seniors stay in their homes and communities, we're helping them to be economically secure, not simply living out of poverty. Our initiative is currently operating in 17 states, and Washington is the 13th state to launch this initiative under the leadership of the Washington Association of Area Agencies on Aging. And the tool that is really guiding this work, the Elder Economic Security Standard Index, is a new measure that illustrates what it costs to meet basic needs without any form of public, private, or informal assistance for elders who are 65 plus and living in the community. And Allison's going to go through the numbers here in Washington after my presentation. So a little bit about why do we need a tool like the Elder Index. As all of you know very, very well, our aging population is growing, and it's going to strain our current mechanisms of support, particularly in this tough fiscal climate. So we need more realistic tools that assess what true economic need is. And the federal poverty level really falls short of this goal. The federal poverty level measures deprivation as opposed to economic security. What we've found in states where we've released the Elder Index thus far is that Social Security payments alone fail to provide economic security. And furthermore, even those who have other sources of income in retirement, including individual retirement accounts or personal savings, may also fall short of this benchmark of economic security. And in Washington State, we know that more than 1 in 5 elders is living solely on Social Security income. So this graph really illustrates the power of the Elder Index tool in illustrating the income gap, the difference between what elders have and what they actually need to meet basic needs. And so we want to take a close look at this graph, or 3/4 of it, and you see that average Social Security income for women and men falls short of this benchmark of the Elder Index. The average Elder Index for Washington for renters is a little over $21,000 a year. Also, median income in retirement, again, that includes other sources of income, falls short for women. And men, median income in retirement does reach the level of the Elder Index. So what you can see very clearly here is that there is a gap between what elders need and what they have, and that women are disproportionately affected in retirement. The next part of our work really involves looking at how available income support programs help elders close that income gap. When we release the Elder Index in states, we get 3 common questions. The first question is, well, how are elders doing with respect to this benchmark? And that income modeling work that I just showed you is one step at answering that question. The next question is, well, what about all the services and supports that are available to help elders? And this modeling work is really designed to answer that question. So what we have here is a case study for an elder woman living in King County on average Social Security income, a little over $13,000 a year. And we're able to illustrate the individual impact of income support programs as well as the cumulative impact. So if this woman was able to access all of the supports available to her, is she able to reach economic security? And the answer is yes. She has access to food assistance through the basic food program. She has access to prescription assistance through a low-income subsidy of Medicare Part D, medical assistance through Medicaid, and also finally energy assistance through LIHEAP, and also the property tax exemption program here in Washington State.
Stacey, maybe you could tell them that that's the last box.
Yes, the missing box illustrates going up towards economic security. I know that folks here in Washington were very, very concerned about the Senior Citizen Services Act, and we wanted to do some work to illustrate how access to those community-based supports can help an elder reach economic security. So we have here in Yakima County an elder woman who's living at 150% of the federal poverty level. She gets access to the basic food program, she gets access to the Medicaid low-income subsidy, and that's where her federal income supports stop. Otherwise, her income is too high for her to have access to other forms of assistance. And that's why it's so important that she have access to community-based services provided by the area agencies on aging. What we've been able to illustrate here, and unfortunately it's cut off, is that access to congregate meals, to transportation programs, to foot care, and to a monthly health checkup meet 21% of her income needs, allowing her to reach economic security and stay in her home and community where she wants to be. And the power of this modeling is that it really illustrates what you all know very well, which is without access to these community-based supports, she would be forced into a nursing home. That's what's allowing her to stay in her home and community and filling that income gap that makes it nearly impossible for her to meet her basic needs. So, again, I want to underscore that this data and information is really meant for action. We want to see it get into the hands of service providers and advocates who can use it to serve the goals that they're already working towards. And so I'm going to share some examples of how the Elder Index tool and this policy work that I've outlined can be used in capacity building for your organizations, in direct service, in policy, in outreach to seniors and the public at large, and also in further research. So a few examples here of how the Elder Index tool is really developing leaders and building capacities. WOW works very, very closely with our state partners, in this case W4A, to help them really become the go-to leader on economic security in their state. And then we've worked with partners in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and New Jersey to do the same. And as a result of having the Elder Index tool and leading this campaign in their state, they've been able to leverage additional resources to continue this work and to staff their programs moving forward. In Minnesota, our partners were successful in securing a grant from the National Council on Aging to develop video advocacy on economic security that will be used to further the goal of seeing economic security implemented in the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act. In both Wisconsin and New Jersey, our partners became successful grantees of the California Women's Foundation to establish an Aging Justice Policy Institute, helping service providers in that state build their advocacy capacity and become more integrated in the legislative process in their state. This is a nice example from Jefferson County, Wisconsin, of how a Jefferson County elderly benefits specialist, Denise Grossman, is using the Elder Index. And she says very clearly here that about 23% of my clients live below the federal poverty level. It takes patience and creativity to look at the remaining 77% of my caseload and strategize with them about making their income stretch to cover their basic essentials. For some, it may mean selling their home of over 45 years and moving into a subsidized living space. The Elder Index gives us something tangible to explain to our clients why it is that they're struggling to meet their basic needs. And it helps us illustrate to our clients that it's not their fault. We've been very excited in California to have some success in seeing the Elder Index integrated into bills, into legislation. Our California partners in both 2009 and 2010 introduced the Elder Economic Dignity Act, which would have required the State Unit on Aging, as well as area agencies on aging across the state, to integrate the Elder Index into their strategic planning and how they target their services to those who are economically vulnerable. In addition, it would have required area agencies on aging to use the Elder Index as a measure of economic vulnerability in their case management intake, as opposed to the federal poverty level. Again, more accurately reflecting which elders are struggling to meet their basic expenses. This year it was reintroduced as the Elder Economic Planning Act. And I will say that this legislation moved far in 2009. It was sent to the governor's desk and then vetoed because of supposed cost pressures. And so it's really incumbent on us as advocates to illustrate the importance of this tool as a use for planning, as a use for evaluation and development, and as a tool that really holds our legislators accountable in terms of how they allocate scarce resources. But we're very hopeful that in 2011 the bill will get some traction. Also in California, they introduced the Economic Security Task Force legislation, which would have developed a 2-year bipartisan task force to create goals for reducing economic insecurity among Californians by 50%. And that bipartisan task force would have used concrete measures, including the Elder Index, to establish those goals.